All right. Yeah. So any
Yes,
insight,
Chris.
any idea about how you're seeing it as you move forward, like in terms of how you're refining your problem statement, how you are seeing your problem as an opportunity in the larger entrepreneurial domain? Are you able to possibly on the go corrections? Are you able to do that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Yes, sir.
So there are many sort of like ideas which are floated. I come across a lot of ideas which are presented by entrepreneurs and different platforms. And many times it happens that problems are almost like known to us. Yeah. Even if you are judging, if you are possibly coming across something like that, you will come across that things are very common. We are taking up problems from a very known sort of like space. And you will sometimes also question whether this is to be taken at this stage or not. Yeah. But interestingly, entrepreneurs have ability to redefine those problems in such a way that it becomes a great opportunity, becomes a sort of like great opportunity for them to take it forward. Yeah. And that happens only because of the uh, Malika, I think you have to mute. You're able to hear some background noise. All right. Yeah. So many times it happens that because of the right definition of problem, you start looking at different aspects of taking those problems forward. You start looking into different possibilities in terms of solutions. Yeah. So that is the whole reason that we are emphasizing so much in terms of problem statement at this stage. As we have discussed earlier, uh, if you have taken up a right problem, like you have taken up a right train or bus, you will reach to a right destination. Do you agree or not? One cannot expect to reaching uh, a station which is not supposed to be on the way to that train. Yeah. If you have boarded a train, you will definitely reach to some places which are on that track. Problems are like that. You have taken up a problem which is going to be on certain track, will possibly leading to those solutions. Yeah. Very rarely it happens that you take a detour and then find out something. Yeah, that is a very creative sort of like opportunity you come across. Majority of time it happens that you will the problem which you have taken up, the problem you have defined at early stage will possibly be leading your solution towards. Yeah, and that is why I think it's very, very critical to work extensively on problem statement or problem definition, I would say. Yeah. Don't just jump on the idea just because you're liking it or some other people have appreciated you for the idea. Try to go a little deeper that what type of problem this idea is going to solve and for how long this idea is going to be there with the in terms of like the possibilities or statement. As you get the confidence that this idea is going to solve much bigger problems, then possibly you should move ahead. Till the time you don't have confidence that idea is going to work to the extent you are expecting, I think you should work more in terms of like how the problem is defined so far and how that problem can be refined and further sort of like developed to be taken forward. Do you agree? Most of you? All right, so we have almost 28 participants. Saurabh, should we start or should we wait for another 2 3 minutes?
Uh, we can start, sir. It's just
Yeah.
key they are still joining. Yeah.
All right.
So let me just have the pleasure of introducing you again, sir, because maybe like we have some new members joining today.
All right.
So yeah, thank you so much, sir. So we have today with us Mr. Jitendra Singh Rajput, who is also a faculty member and head of strategic design management, also a postgraduate programming and a vice chairperson of Integrated Design Services, which is a consultancy wing of National Institute of Design. He holds a bachelor degree in mechanical engineering, and post that he did his graduated in strategic design management from National Institute of Design itself. He is also having an experience of working in automotive and heavy engineering organizations in the area of research and development before he joined National Institute of Design. He is having more than an experience of 22 years in automotive, heavy engineering, MSME sector, and academia. And today we are having him for the market analysis and opportunity workshop that we are having today. So this is the third workshop that we are gathered here for. So thank you so much, sir, for joining and giving us your valuable time. So looking forward to the interaction for the students as well. I would just request each and every student whosoever has joined to kindly please switch on your camera so that we can make it a more of an interactive session. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thank you, Saurabh. And I'll I'll be interested in knowing who has joined, like who has not been part of the earlier session. Can you please raise hands? Those who have not
Please,
been part of the earlier sessions. If there are anybody, all right.
please raise your hand. Yeah.
Sanskriti, Shahnawaz, okay, I'm able to see. Prabmeet, all right. Harsh, okay. Yeah, all right, guys. Yeah, most of the members are from the previous sessions. Yeah, all right. So for the new members, I would briefly talk about how we started the session. We talked about the problem statement, and we talked about importance of like why we need to define our problems and how right definition of problem basically leads to possibilities in right directions. So that was the approach we took up earlier. Then the uh, participants, the groups, entrepreneurs started working on the problem statement, which we discussed almost like 5 or 6 problem statements we discussed in the last session. And today we are going to talk about broadly, we'll be talking about the market analysis. And in the course, we will be basically discussing about importance of research, how you should emphasize more on research part so that you will get right insights, right ideas, right approaches before you move forward. So that is going to be our focus of this session today. And the later session, which will be happening on 28th, we will be focusing more on, we will be having a discussion on how you have developed this part in terms of research. What is your planning? What is your approach to looking into possibilities and insights? So that is how we are placed for next 2 sessions, today and day after tomorrow. I'll share my screen.
Sure. Yeah.
Sir, I can.
Yes, please.
Right. So everybody, I think, yeah. I hope everybody is able to see that. All right.
Yes, sir. It is visible.
Yeah. So this is the brief. These are the brief topics which we are going to discuss today. We are going to talk about designing research for social innovation, which is today we are going to do. And I'm emphasizing more on in terms of designing of research because research also need to be designed. You sometimes feel that you have got the idea, and sometimes we just go out and start working on the implementation of it. But many times it happens that you need further research to understand the problem rightly and to understand other aspect of your enterprise in detail. And for that purpose, you should basically plan a research in such a way that it gives you maximum out of it. And that is something which is called designing of research. In right sort of like proportion, you should have all tools and measures and uh, ways of getting information. We will be talking uh, about creative opportunities through users, market, society, and environment, which is mostly the domain of any social innovation initiative. Then we'll be discussing about possibilities in the market scenario in the user's context. A few tools, I would say there are multiple tools otherwise which can be used, and there are multiple tools being used by you already. So that way there is no dearth of tools otherwise. but you have to be very precise in terms of like using which tool at which sort of like junction. Many of us use uh, uh, the marketing tools, those who are coming from marketing background. Engineers usually rely on tools which are either borrowed from marketing or in some of the cases design tools or quality tools are very common, like 80-20 rules to filter out sort of like filter out or demystify the situation. In some cases, we use affinity sort of like mapping, and we try to look for possibility of like common entities coming together. These are all quality tools developed by great sort of like quality experts, mostly developed in Japan. But there are a lot of like marketing tools, a lot of design tools are also there. I'll be briefly talking about it, and then we can possibly have a discussion on them when we take up problems on the later day. And then we'll be talking about insights for value creation. Okay. All right. So why entrepreneurship or being entrepreneur is a unique profession? Yeah, this is I think very interesting to discuss here. Yeah. All of you want to be entrepreneurs. You have taken up very interesting problems from social domain. That itself is a very interesting sort of like area, I would say, because many people want to try out their sort of like entrepreneurial challenges or opportunities in the commercial domain where they are seeing possibilities of going out, selling something, or maybe acquiring some sort of like data and then selling those data. In some cases, people are providing services and all. But social domains have very interesting objective to meet social requirement. In most of the scenarios, there are possibilities that your revenue might not be of that scale. In many scenarios, social domains are not very lucrative because of the complexities of the problem and the engagement of multiple type of multiple factors coming from agencies or maybe stakeholders or maybe environmental or policy domains. So that way it becomes a very challenging, very interesting and very sort of, I would say, very noble sort of like area to work on for the entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship is a unique profession because it doesn't need to be one sort of like expert in one domain. Yeah, a person doesn't need to be expert of only one domain, basically. Yeah, you have to be expert of multiple domains. Yeah. You have to possibly look into multiple areas together to resolve not only resolve the issues but also to coordinate, to possibly engage with multiple agencies or multiple sort of like people who are going to possibly work in the domain. So that way it becomes a very complex sort of like area to be an entrepreneur in the social domain. And these are some of the skills which we usually talk about. We say that people should have problem solving skills where you are basically trying out your hands and you're trying to resolve some sort of like issues which you have taken up in recent time. Technological expertise is one of the common domain which entrepreneurial skills or entrepreneurs usually possess. Consumer focus is one of the very important skill which I call as primary skill one should have. You should have ability to manage multiple things, which includes projects or sometimes products, in some cases financial management in terms of time management. These skills are very, very critical to see your organization is well established and well running. Sometimes sales and marketing is one of the very important key ingredient of uh, this expertise, and sometimes you borrow also these skill sets. Risk management, decision making ability, strategic thinking is one of the very interesting domain. Emotional intelligence is one of the skill set which is very important in this domain. Yeah. But apart from this, a lot of other skills are also required as a soft skills, which are leadership, creativity, sometimes communication. A good communicator sometimes becomes a very good sort of like entrepreneur. Sometimes you try to hire people who are good with communication if you're not having those skills. Adaptability to situations. Yeah. Why I'm talking about all these things? Because this is something which is also helping you to do a right research when you go out and when you try to test your problem or test your ideas in the real situation. You have to be good in terms of networking to get resources to get your work done easily from maybe authorities or from maybe the co-partners or collaborators. Resilience is one of the very strong sort of like ability required. as a soft skill, I would say. Then we see negotiation, ethical, and continuous learning ability, which possibly makes you afloat in the long run. If you're constantly learning, constantly evolving with the situation, and being ethical is very, very important. Yeah, not only from the human perspective, but also from other perspectives like environment, society, and others. Yeah. In a long run, a lot of enterprises fail. It's a reality, has been discussed extensively and might have been discussed in earlier platforms also. And as per my sort of like brief analysis from the existing resources, I could see all these figures very interestingly coming up. It says that 90% products fail in the market. Yeah. According to one of the professors from Harvard Business School. Yeah. He says that 90% products fails, and that is a very alarming situation. But we still try to bring in our products and services out there in the market. 20% of new businesses fail within first 2 years. Yeah, this is a very interesting figure. That 20% businesses fail in first 2 years. That means you have very high chances that you get into that gray zone where there might be possibility of failure or something. Yeah, so you have to be careful. 45% of business startups don't survive the fifth year. 65% of startup doesn't sustain or fail by the end of 10 years. Yeah. And tech startups have a very high rate of like failure, around 50%. Venture backed fintech startup have even different sort of like figures. There are all mixed figures. Yeah. Just for the understanding purpose, I'm just bringing it here. 75% cases are coming from that zone. Yeah. In terms of challenges which are faced by entrepreneurs, almost like 45% entrepreneurs or enterprises lack market demand. That means there is no pull from the market. People are not seeing their customers coming to buy their products. There's a major challenge which we are seeing in the current market. Maybe you can relate this with the previous slide. I should have put together. Yeah. They're running out of cash in most of the scenarios. Yeah, almost like 30%. Yeah, wrong team or leadership. There's a personal sort of like choices which have been made by people. And sometimes there are lack of coordination or good combinations within the teams is one of the very dominant. Poor product market fit. Yeah, poor product market fit and lack of market demand can possibly come close to around 60% of problem in the enterprises. And this is where I think one need to work on. Yeah, other relevant sort of like figures are related to competitive pressure, failure to pivot, legal and regulatory issues. These are the other on the fringes. But major, I think more important sort of like figures are coming from the lack of market demand and poor product mix or poor product fit, market fit. Product market fit is there. So when it comes to possibly understanding what is really going to work here, we need to have a very strong sort of like research activity as part of our initiative in the early stage of startups. Yeah. A lot of like good research lead to good sort of like insights, and those good insights can possibly be used by the entrepreneurs to leverage their solutions or maybe offering in the market. So when we say research is basically a systematic investigation of study or a study aimed at discovering, interpreting, and or refining knowledge. It's a very basic sort of like state, which says that it's a systematic investigation. One should not say that because you have some idea or you have come across some people saying something, you should work on it. It's not a right research. If let's say 10 people come and say that, okay, there is a possibility of doing something, then you just start building your idea on that. Or maybe you came across something in your mind and you started feeling that, okay, this is something which is going to work in a real scenario. Should not be immediately taken up. This is my suggestion. This is where I think a lot of entrepreneurs fail in terms of finding a right market demand or seeing a poor product market fit. Yeah, it happens all because of sometimes research is not well done. Yeah. So systematic investigation, that means you have to have a process in place for discovering, interpreting, and refining knowledge. Yeah. Okay, it helps in terms of understanding the situation better. So you basically try to understand where you are right now and how you should basically work in that scenario. Make somebody or the entrepreneur aware of what is to be done in terms of providing clarity about the opportunity and risk associated with the opportunity. Yeah, it is very important that you should be aware of how the opportunity is going to emerge and how the associated risks are also going to be coming along with it. To plan better, to go prepared in the long run is the idea of doing a right research. Yeah. And understanding one's capability. In a lot of scenarios, it happens that entrepreneurs sometimes don't evaluate what are the possibilities at their own end. Maybe some ideas are great in terms of scale, possibly in terms of impact or reach, but in some cases, they are not good enough to be taken up by the entrepreneur itself. In some scenarios, it happens that your own capabilities are not at that level that you can possibly take up that idea in a big scale. Maybe lack of funds, maybe lack of team, or maybe the execution requiring more time, or maybe market is not ready for that. Could be the idea to assess your own capability and prospects. That can possibly be judged from the user research, maybe done from the research. Research is not limited to idea only. Yeah, so this is very important to understand. The idea only idea in the mind is not going to help you in terms of going forward. So basically, idea could be a lead to take up your problem forward, or you maybe your initiative forward. But when you are trying to understand what type of idea you're working on, you should basically look into what type of problem you are going to solve, which is an opportunity, which is something which you have come across, maybe because of some chances, or maybe because of your rigor, or maybe your exposure to some area. You have come across some of the opportunities, and those opportunities possibly may lead to some possibilities of enterprise. But that is just one step of it. In some cases, you should also need to understand what type of problems you are trying to solve. So why you are solving that problem? What type of need is there? Why a society or a section of people or maybe some organizations require certain type of solutions to be done? In some scenarios like healthcare scenario, which we have discussed earlier in terms of problem statements, uh, the problem need to be defined rightly in terms of like why it need to be solved at this stage, why it has not been solved so far, or why somebody will be needing those problems to be solved in future. Maybe with change of time, there might be possibility that problem is solved automatically, or in some cases, problem doesn't have a capacity to be solved in such a way. Are sometimes ideas to be explored in a right manner. For whom you are solving this problem, it's very, very critical in a lot of scenarios, especially engineers, especially non-designers, I would say, look at problem from technology perspective. They feel that, okay, there is something which you have developed as a kit or as a device or as a system, and sometimes it goes well with the in terms of like outcome. But many scenarios, the users are not too fussy or too interested in terms of what type of outcome it is. Yeah. In terms of technological intervention, they are more interested in the larger benefit of using that device or that system. In those scenarios, understanding of customers is very, very critical. I'll possibly bring in some of the examples in the latest slide, like how you should possibly look for the customer uh, understanding and how possibly that can be solved. Where to provide the solution? It's very important that you should have a market. You should have a market to present your problem. If market is not ready, then there is a problem in given situation. If market is not educated, there is a problem. If market is flooded with similar sort of like solutions, there is going to be a bigger problem for you. If there are no products or no services or no such interventions in the market, then it is also a big problem for you. So in those scenarios, you should have understanding of like what is the market and how market should be defined. How to solve the problem is basically the ideation where we are possibly working extensively in terms of our ideas, our approaches and all. And this is possibly helping us in terms of how we are going to use that ideation forward. Why someone will take your solution is one of the questions which is very prominent in our research activity. There might be possibility that your solution is really good, but people are not willing to take it because of value perception of that solution. If value is perceived to be very low, then possibly people will not take it. If value perception is very high, then possibly people will be willing to take it more. Yeah. There's a basic sort of like economics of or economic sort of like understanding of situation. If value is seen, then possibly people will take it. If value is not perceived, then there is no taker for that. Yeah, and there are a lot of products like that which have not seen great success in the market. We'll discuss that. Yeah. For what benefit you are doing this? Ultimately, organization is at the central sort of like role where you are trying to solve the problem for. The organization is more keen in terms of understanding how these benefits.
Sorry for the inconvenience, sir. I would request Shaksham to please mute yourself. Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Sorry,
Yeah.
sir.
So we need to understand for what benefits you are going to do this activity. The organization's objective are to be considered at a very primary level. Organizations definitely work for society and work for the people outside, but they have ultimate objective is to earn profit. In a social scenario, also there might be an objective to earn great profit out of the organization. In some cases, you can also work for non-profit, but ultimate sustenance of the organization is one of the priority in the given situation. And for those, whatever benefits you are going to gain out of given situation is very important to be noticed. How solution will be delivered? Yeah, what are the means, modes, ways, approaches, which is a business part of your work, need to be understood and to be explored uh, in the research activity. The larger change and impact on the society need to be understood, and that can also be generated from your research activities. Right. So, designing research for user understanding. How many of you have done user research? Can we have some responses, please? Have you done a user research? How you define your users? Ishman,
Yes, sir.
Krishman
Good evening,
has,
sir.
yeah, Krishman. How do you define
Yes,
your
sir.
user?
Sir, actually, my startup is we build businesses for the content creators. So
Okay,
our user is the content creator. So we basically made some user personas. So how niche content creators look like, how they do things, what are their problems, what they need, and we just made something like a single pager of each personas and made around 10 of them. And
okay,
we did it by like just talking to more than 50 content creators and getting to know their problems and the things they usually do as content creators. So we
all
got
right.
to know something important, like they are very much cared about their brand image rather than earnings. So
Okay,
we
you're
did it,
saying content creators are concerned about their brand image.
yeah, more than their earnings.
Okay, so they
Yeah.
emphasize more on how they are seen and how they are perceived in the larger
Yes,
scenario.
yes, sir. They are very much concerned about that कि
All right.
मेरी perception खराब ना हो, वो उस पे बहुत ध्यान देते हैं.
Okay, very interesting insight. Persona is very interesting tool to understand what type of users you have. Yeah.
Hmm.
And Krishman, are you coming from any similar domain where persona studies are very important, like branding or maybe design or something?
No, sir. Actually, I'm from electronics engineering background, but because
Oh,
of my
amazing.
last startup, so I know it is an important thing. So my co-founder is from that background, from
Okay.
branding and design. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So persona study is one of the very interesting tool to understand how different personas are there who can possibly represent your customer groups. If you have idea of those persona, let's say uh, engineering student could be one persona. They have certain characteristics which are common in all engineering students. So it can possibly represent a good number of people in a given situation. That is one of the way of understanding your customer. Yeah. But in some scenarios where you have variety of personas available in your scenarios, possibly that doesn't work very well. And you will possibly be failing in terms of understanding what type of requirements each personas have.
Abhinav, please mute yourself.
All right. Yeah. Anybody else? Thank you, Krishna. Anybody who has who has tried to understand what type of users they have? Yeah, Aryan.
Yeah, hi, good evening, sir.
Good evening. Yeah.
So, sir, basically, I've done two things. As I discussed in the last meet, our Parihar's aim is to, hygienify public toilets. So, to look at it that way, any person who uses a public washroom, who uses a commode, is a user. But initially, as I said, we'll be moving with the B2B setup, wherein we'll be targeting, office complexes, colleges, schools, airways, railways, etc. But yes, our end users will be any person, mainly women, because they face this issue on a more than men, more than anyone else. So they would be our end users. But yes, we also did a survey of around 250 people, 250 plus
All right.
people. So trying to, yeah.
Okay. So any insights which you have gained from your research, like what type of people you usually come across who have been positive about your products, or maybe some negative responses related to such type of initiative or ideas? Have you done any analysis of that?
Right, sir, I did. So actually, the insight that I got from that survey that I did was that uh, everyone at this moment is facing this issue that the toilet seats that they are coming across, whether it be even in a mall or a hotel, or they are not, they are not clean. They are usually wet.
Yes.
I've talked to a lot of my female friends wherein they were facing the similar issue. Even in a five-star hotels washroom, they had to hover over the seat because it wasn't clean, it wasn't dry, it was wet. So that's what I'm working upon, making changes to my products as well, trying to solve every problem that they face.
All right. I think you have very interesting data. Almost 250 people have responded to a questionnaire, you are saying, na?
Right, yes, I basically regulated a
Right.
Google form. So right now, it was for my college and my friends only, but sooner I'll be
Yeah.
releasing it. I was actually thinking of adding more questions to that so that I
Okay.
could share it with a broader audience.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Very interesting. I think you have interesting thing to do with the form, as well as you have to also look into how you can possibly analyze that data. When you will possibly spreading that data and you will be seeing certain patterns emerging there, maybe you will have a lot of like qualitative insights in terms of how people prefer, behave, or choose certain type of
Definitely.
options.
Yes.
So maybe that will be a great sort of like research to be done.
Right. Yes, sir.
So in a lot of scenarios, when we say users, anybody has done similar sort of like work? Anybody want to share some information on users? Ashutosh, yes.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Ashutosh. Yeah, please.
Sir, my product is basically to make mental wellness accessible to all. So I interviewed a few people using these Google Forms and personal interactions as well. So I
Okay.
have identified that people want to make anonymity, like they don't want to be judged when they share their issues or problems with others. And they see
Okay.
communication as a barrier as well. Like if they want to communicate in like some other language other than English and Hindi, they face trouble in communicating in those languages with like
Absolutely.
the mental health professionals are limited in like regional languages, offering a
Yeah.
multilingual support to people. And at the same time, they want to maintain their anonymity so that they are not judged by the other person depending on the severity of the issue or the condition that they are sharing with others. And people find it quite more expensive, like because of the recurring costs they have to face because of arranging these meetings with mental health professionals. So these are the few problems that I have identified. And for the user base, I have interviewed working professionals, school students, and like people living in old age homes. And like not on Google Forms, but I have interviewed a few domestic victims, like domestic abuse victims.
Abuse
How
victims.
they,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's very interesting domain to look into. Especially healthcare requires a lot of have a lot of communication issues because of our healthcare education being mostly on the in one language, mostly in English. It has created a lot of problems. A good doctor sometimes is recognized or referred also because of their communication skills. Many times, certain doctors are preferred because they communicate very well with their patients. Yeah, many times, many surveys are there where communication has been termed as one of the very important challenge in the healthcare domain, where people are not able to communicate rightly, or people are not able to possibly engage with or maybe share their problems rightly, is one of the biggest issue in the healthcare communication. And there are initiatives not only by the government but also from the non profit organizations to bridge this gap, to provide more access in terms of communication or conversation between doctor and the patient. So it's a very important area to be worked on. Yeah. And understanding consumer or users challenges in this domain is very, very critical, because sometimes people are hesitant not because of the language issue, but also sometimes the overall scenario in the given situation. Sometimes people are overwhelmed by the idea of meeting a doctor, or maybe meeting somebody who is such an expert or something. The uh, the issues related to maybe privacy or maybe anonymity or some such type of challenges are very, very critical. I think that need to be taken care of. Yep. All right. So moving forward, I think we'll discuss more problems on the go. But moving forward, I think it's very important who your users are, like why they are there in this given situation, why they need to be addressed in certain way. If all the audience is your user, then possibly you have a different challenge in hand. If your users are limited to one of the segment, then challenges will become much different than what you have anticipated so far. So that way, it's very important to understand who's coming or who is getting into this net of user who are going to use your problems, your solutions in given situation. What type of challenges they are facing? Sometimes we need to understand their specific problems. Many times it happens the problem which we have taken up is possibly a generalized problem for a given user. Let's say in the scenario of healthcare users where they want to be they don't want their names to be disclosed or their identity to be disclosed to people. And this might be there with certain number of people, but in a larger scenario, you will come across maybe challenges which are much different than this. Maybe uh, the idea of maybe not disclosing name may have relationship with some other factors also. That could be possibility in given situation, and that is where the problems can be defined in those specific context. Yeah. Users may come up with multiple idea the way they have perceived those problems. Yeah. That need to be understood in a right manner. It's very, very critical to understand why they're calling something as a problem, why they're trying this specific problem to be solved. It's something to be explored in more detail. Yeah. What alternatives they have so far? It's very important to understand what type of solution they are possibly using at present situation. Let's say in terms of mental health issues, what type of console options are there? What type of aids they have been possibly using, or what type of maybe solutions they have been basically relying on so far to resolve their issues is one of the very important study. In some cases, you will come across some competitors. So it is very easy for you to do those studies, do a benchmark study, and then come up with some solutions. In some cases, you will not find your competitors present in the market scenario, especially in social sector, where you are trying to solve a problem for a community, which a problem which is evolving, a problem which is more unstructured or undefined so far. In those scenarios, finding a competitor is very difficult. But in those scenarios, you can definitely rely on factors which are being alternatives to given situation. Is one of the approach to understand what type of possibilities are there. Why they will take your idea. It's sometimes very important to understand why somebody will buy your idea, why they will take up your services or products. In most of the scenarios, there is need to be a differentiation from what they are already going through or using as a solution. In some cases, if problem is going to be resolved first time, then possibly you can work on what type of unique aspect of those solutions or what type of unique requirements can be addressed in a given situation. Could be the approach to understand your user requirements. Yeah. So many times it happens like if there is no differentiation, then your product or services will not be taken up. If there is no benchmarking from the previous situation to the next one, your customers or your target audiences will not take up your solution. So that becomes a challenge in some of the scenarios, and you need to be very careful about how you're going to create a differentiation. How much they will pay for it? Yeah, value perception. In some cases, value is perceived from the money perspective. How much money I pay and how much I get in return. In some cases, customers are not money centric, but also more of a perceived value centric. So you need to understand what type of perceived value they will have from your solution. That need to be understood in a right manner. A affluent sort of like person will possibly value more luxury or more facilities in a given situation. Uh, a person who is deprived of many such things will possibly see value in terms of basic sort of like requirements met in a given situation. Yeah, a mobile phone for a minimal user or maybe for somebody who is just needing a phone to make calls will possibly have lesser value for a high-end phone. But somebody who is really wanting to have a phone for maybe show off or maybe to present uh, some sort of like status will value a more premium phone. How much customers are there? How many customers are there in the market is one of the very important challenge which need to be resolved through your research. You need to estimate how many people will really be in your largest sort of like domain. How many people will possibly be benefited out of your products? How many will really take up your product is very, very important to be understood. So there are a lot of domains which also fall in the domain of market understanding. But when we study users, we also get into those domains to understand value, to understand the market, or to understand the competitor products and all. Yeah. Moving forward, so how do we understand our user? In basic scenarios, most of the scenarios, we rely on our questionnaires. We throw some questionnaires and we try to see responses from there. Yeah. We sometimes try to understand what type of responses are there, and then we try to map those responses in certain way. And there are more creative approaches in terms of understanding those responses. Maybe you can have questions which are leading. Maybe you can have questions which are verifying your previous questions just to validate whether respondents are responding in right sort of like manner or not, or they are whether they are conscious about what they are taking or picking in terms of questionnaires. In some cases, you can have broader understanding of like how the overall response has been there, whether a person is responding in certain manner or certain sort of like tone. Those can be possibly the outcome of questionnaires, but questionnaires have a lot of limitations. In some cases, you cannot ask cross questions in questionnaires, okay? Because of certain response, you can not go back and verify certain type of responses in a questionnaire scenario. If let's say I have asked certain questions, what type of color you prefer in certain type of clothes. Somebody is saying color black, or maybe somebody is saying color, let's say color white. Yeah, I will possibly not be getting an opportunity to go back and check why you have said white, or what type of shades of white you would prefer, or what type of material you require, because you have not asked those questions in the later sort of like sections. you'll not be able to go back and check those or verify those responses. There's a problem with the questionnaire. Yeah, questionnaires sometimes work very well in terms of like reaching out to large number of people, but sometimes analyzing those large number of people in terms of their distribution, their categories, their sort of like uh, commonalities within those responses becomes very, very tricky to evaluate. Yeah. In those scenarios, we rely on more qualitative sort of like responses, which are in the form of interviews. Many scenarios where we just want to have a conversation with the users, the right users, we go for interviews. Sometimes we ask them to respond to certain questions in given structured manner. In some cases, we just casually talk to them. We try to engage with with them in some conversation sort of like manner and try to get some responses. Domains like healthcare sometimes need to go for that type of responses because you need to ask certain questions which are more personal to the user. In some cases, you can also have leading questions which are possibly be asked at the end of certain type of questions. Some cases in unstructured interviews, you will possibly be relying more on questions which are evolving through the conversations. In those scenarios, interviews work very well. Many times you take up interview after your questionnaires because you get some sort of like responses in a given pattern. And then you pick some people from those questionnaires and take up those forward in the form of interviews. Interviews are more qualitative, and that is why they sometimes don't represent the large number of people's responses. Sometimes there are biases also, then sometimes you will find certain questions are very specific to certain type of responses. Yeah. So in those scenarios, you have to have a judgment between questionnaires and interviews. In some cases, questionnaires are more authentic because of the numbers, and interviews are more insightful because of the conversation and personal sort of like connect between user and the researcher. So in those scenarios, balance of both can work for understanding your users. In some cases, you rely on observation also. Observations can be possibly going around the scenario and you look at your users or the given situations in certain manner with certain objective, and you can take up those ideas to understand what type of user scenarios are there. In some cases, you want to see users how they are using certain type of products, and you do observation. In some cases, you try to understand the largest scenario where those users are working. Maybe in a working scenario, you want to understand ergonomic conditions of certain type of workers. Let's say leather industries, what type of environmental challenges are there with the users and how they are encountering those challenges. In those cases, you can possibly go and roam around the factories, try to see what type of conditions are there and what type of challenges are faced by certain type of users. Could be the observation where you are not asking any direct questions and you are not engaging with them in terms of any conversation. Yeah. Engagement through dialogues, group discussions, workshops, or experiments is one of the other way of like understanding your users. In certain entrepreneurial scenarios, you can possibly look for those opportunities where you call your users in certain conditions and give them some task and ask them to respond to those sort of like requirements. In some cases, people organize workshops to understand what type of behaviors or what type of challenges people demonstrate during the given activities. It is useful in certain cases, but might not be a thumb rule for all the research. Yeah, so you have to be very, very careful about what type of tools you are going to use. I'm just broadly talking about what possibilities are there in this scenario. Study of user in natural environment. Maybe in some cases you have to do an ethnographic study where you are being with the community as a participant and you try to observe people in and around and you also experience that scenario on your own. So being a person or a researcher in the place of user is one of the very strong sort of like approach in research activity. Yeah. Shadowing is sometimes you take up, you try to follow users, try to see what type of activities they are doing and try to understand whatever challenges they might be facing. Yeah. Users just don't respond to or just tell you everything. This is very important sort of like understanding to be there in any given situation. In a lot of scenarios, we throw certain questions to users and we feel that users have responded in right sort of like manner. And we take up those ideas, we work on, build on those ideas and try to possibly come up with some solutions. It doesn't work in multiple situations. Users being human being, sometimes they are not comfortable answering certain questions. Sometimes they are too conscious and they're not answering something in right manner. Sometimes they are not trying to present their right picture, right image in front of you, and they're not responding to your questions in right manner. Yeah, especially in cases where you're asking them certain questions which are not very happy sort of like questions to them. Yeah. In those scenarios, they sometimes respond in certain way, and you have to be very careful about what type of answers you are getting. We usually rely on collecting conscious and subconscious responses. Yeah, both need to be collected. So questionnaires give you a lot of like conscious responses, which are consciously responded by the users. Yeah. And in some scenarios, you rely on your subconscious responses, which are to be taken in certain way. Yeah, there are tools to collect certain type of responses, which are subconscious. So maybe asking for a choice of color, maybe a conscious response in terms of an automobile could be black color car or black color SUV. But if you see out in the road, you will find a lot of like white color cars, a lot of colorful SUVs are there in the market, whereas black is not in a very strong number. Yeah. If you do a very straightforward survey, most of respondents will say that they will prefer a black color car. Okay. So their subconscious response is something else, which we need to capture. In certain healthcare practices, many times people are asked this question whether they are conscious about their health uh, uh, sort of like monitoring. Do they do their health monitoring regularly? Most of the responses are in positive manner. If you ask certain people, do they do their parameter check every week, let's say in terms of blood sugar or maybe in terms of their BP or some quick parameters? Most of the scenarios people will say, okay, I do this. But in majority of them, it will be a negative response if you really observe them rightly. Yeah, most of the people are not conscious about their health. Most of the people who say they have joined gym will respond in a very positive manner in terms of their activity, but you will find them absent in the gym activity most of the time. Yeah. Gyms basically oversubscribe and earn. This is a phenomena in gym scenario. All because people commit, but they don't follow the routine. If you do a research in those domains, your responses need to be led by a lot of like subconscious responses. Need to have those responses very clearly jotted down. Those subconscious responses can be possibly captured through multiple different level of questions, or maybe observing while they are responding to certain questions, or in some cases, making them work on certain activities and observing those which are not a direct response to your query. Could be the approach in these scenarios. Yeah. Probing deeper to understand their behavioral responses. In a lot of scenarios, this works. So instead of asking only which color you like in a SUV, possibly you can probe, okay, what is your last car's color? What is something you aspire to be? Can you give some reference in this regard? Yeah. If you really want to become something, what you would like. If you want to become that person, what type of assets you like from that person. Could be leading deeper questions which are not straight away asking a simple question that which car color you prefer. Yeah. Many times it happens people respond from their own perspective, but buy cars or materials, goods, electronics as per the choice of their friends or maybe choice of their family members. Is one of the very tricky sort of like situation where your responses are on one side, but actual actions are on other side. Yeah, analyzing data in those sensitive manner is very critical. So when you are seeing and when you are analyzing those user responses, need to have those considerations. Yeah, so if you are analyzing, okay, what type of colors are there which have been chosen, you can possibly validate it with the market requirement or market sort of like existing data. So in those scenarios, you have to be very sensitive about how you are analyzing certain things which are coming from your responses as well as you are getting response from the secondary data. Yeah. So validation of those data is also very critical. And then possibly some creative insights will emerge during the conversations, during the responses, during possibly your analysis of data. You'll find or you will lead to some insights. Yeah. One of the example I'll share with you. Uh, I was part of one of the washing machine project. Yeah, I was doing a research with users, and in that scenario, we came across one of the house in a lower income segment, and we saw and we could visit that house. We could meet the uh, person in the house, the lady in the house who purchased this washing machine. This was a very expensive washing machine, but the house was very small. Yeah, it is usually not the target house for a washing machine company. Yeah, at this high end sort of like product. And when we were discussing with the person, when we were asking certain questions in an informal sort of like interview, we came across a lot of like factors which were not supporting this idea of washing machine being in that house. Yeah. Because most of the time, most of the information which company provided to us was leading to a very aspirational product, very international image sort of like product. It is purchased by those who are able to afford certain type of product. Those are only the people who are buying these products. And our insight was very different than the insight which was like provided by the company. And we tried to probe this. Ultimately, we came across when we were discussing with this person and the other respondents, we came across that washing machine can also be an aspirational product. Yeah, it is not just a product which is used for washing clothes. So aspirational products just to present somebody with a high sort of like value. And in these scenarios, some of the products were gifted by the daughter to the mother. Yeah, they were trying to possibly buy a product which is best in the category, even though it doesn't fit into the economic segment of that product category. Yeah. So those are very interesting sort of like areas where possibly you can look into when you are generating insights, when you are trying to understand your consumers. Similar situations happens with scenarios where emotional or aspirational sort of like segments are there, yeah, where people are more conscious about certain thing which is beyond the money value. Yeah. Especially in healthcare, you will come across a lot of like families or a lot of like people who are ready to spend huge amount of money in healthcare, whereas they are not able to afford that amount of money for any other activity. Yeah, it's a very interesting way to understand how you will capture their idea about healthcare and how they are spending on certain type of activities. Is there any question on the user part? If there are any questions, guys, please feel free to question. Please feel free to stop me in between. Yeah, Ashutosh, yes.
Sir, I had a question. As the size of the questionnaire increases, the user participation decreases. So how to we trade off between these two things? How to like structure
Size
it
of
carefully?
questionnaire, size of questionnaire. Okay, length of questionnaire you're saying.
Yeah,
Yeah, number of
like the number
questions.
of questions if they
Yeah,
increase,
yeah,
the
absolutely.
participation decreases.
Yes. So you have to ask relevant questions. It's very important to ask relevant questions. So sometimes we experiment, and in our scenario, we ask students to experiment with the idea of like not putting first question first. So don't ask name first. Don't ask age first. Don't ask to fill them complete address. Don't ask to them to provide their mobile numbers, email IDs, date of birth, which are very personal. Yeah, sometimes it works. If you're not very fussy about getting the personal details, yeah, don't ask those questions. Sometimes it reduces your burden of like engaging your respondents. This is one. Yeah, you can possibly experiment with this, but it is not that all the time you should avoid these questions. In some cases, it is also helping in terms of building your response session. In some questions, in some scenarios, you can possibly talk about things in sections. Maybe you can intensify your questions with upcoming uh, questions sections. Yeah. So maybe you cannot ask a very serious question at a very early stage. Maybe you can build a scenario slowly and then lead to the respondent to a level where you really want to know the more detail, more deeper sort of like ideas, yeah, or responses. Yeah, Ashutosh.
Actually, sir, by not asking the names and the numbers, how can we see if the
No,
response was
you can ask
authentic or
them
not?
at the later stage. I'm not saying you should not ask, and you can also ask at the early stage. It's not a harm. But sometimes we have seen that the names and contact numbers are deterrent in some cases. People don't want to disclose, especially wherever there is a anonymity is to be maintained. Yeah, so in some cases, what we do, we note down numbers in a separate sheet and we attach it with the questionnaire. Yeah, or sometimes we get back to the respondent and ask them the personal details separately. But in terms of being lengthy or having a lengthy sort of like questionnaire, you have to be very, very critical about what you are asking and why you're asking those questions. So before you float your questionnaire, you just run those questionnaire through 5 or 6, 10 good number of respondents. Yeah, those who will be possibly be able to give you a feedback also. And don't consider those 10 respondents. Have a conversation, discussion, and understand whether questionnaire is going to work or not. This is one. Second is like if there are too many questions coming in, then possibly simplify them by putting them in sections. Especially in Google Sheets, you can have a section one by one. It works in some scenarios. And you can have a section like personal information. Then you can have some preliminary sort of like questions like do you have any health complication in recent time? Then you can intensify this in the next section. What type of health complication? What type of measures you have taken? In the next section, what is your personal idea about the healthcare services in the given situation? Then next, more intensified about the healthcare system is like, what are the problems you have identified in given situation? Can you name those things which you have come across, which have not worked in your favor? Could be the last few sections, which can possibly help you to generate more insights in terms of their personal responses and all. This could be the approach of like questionnaire if it is becoming too lengthy. Yeah. In some question, you have to be very creative also. So maybe you can ask questions which are simple, which are tricky, which are sometimes engaging also. Questions which are not too burdening or boring. In some cases, you are asking them to write too many things on a questionnaire. It's not working out in many cases. Yeah. In some cases, options which have given to them are not relevant to them. Yeah, to the respondents is a bigger deterrent in terms of like getting your questionnaires filled. So many times it happens like if your questionnaire is not having those responses which I want to fill up, then possibly I'll not complete that. So maybe you have given me 4 options, but my option is always coming on others. Or maybe you have given me those options which are not part of the given answers. Or maybe you are asking something which I am not able to perform. Makes your questionnaire very lengthy. Yeah. Or maybe you are asking too many questions in the same manner. Or maybe you're asking same question too many times. Or sometimes deterrent to your sort of like this thing. Another way of getting all the forms filled is to reward them. Yeah. Reward might be in terms of like monetary reward. So you can possibly give them some goodies, coupons and all. In some scenarios, this works, especially on field. Maybe you can give them something as a good gesture. In some cases, reward can be possibly motivational. You can say that, okay, your response will be helpful in terms of like resolving this social issue, which is pending for a long time. Or your response will be able to help us to frame certain type of policies. Is a very good reward in terms of motivation for somebody to fill up those forms. Or sometimes approach about this, yeah, to make your questionnaire easier. In some cases, you can also give some brief information about why you are doing this research at the initial sort of like round. You can say this research is very important and your feedback is very valuable. These type of factors you can possibly bind your respondent in right manner by putting these figures. Yeah. You can sometimes present about possibilities, outcome, which you are looking forward to by having these responses. Could be the way to understand and help your respondents fill up your forms. All right. Any other question on the user
Sir,
research part?
yeah. So we have one question in the chat box that
Okay, I'm sorry,
from
I was not
Gorika.
able to see that.
No worries, sir. I'll just read out it for you. So she's saying that can we use the like a hypothetical situation based questions which can cover up two or more questions answer in it.
Oh yes, yeah. This works very well. So you give them a story or situation, and you say that what you will pick up. Sometimes lead to lot of unconscious sort of like responses or subconscious responses. Yeah. So many times it happens like we use sketching as a tool in some of the research activities. So we ask the respondents to do certain type of sketch. So let's say a research related to maybe some sort of like choices. We ask them to draw those objects and we try to see what type of features. Let's say if I want a good quality remote, a universal remote for television sets, I want to make it more user friendly so that any category of user, maybe kids, maybe elderlies, or maybe blind, can use this remote more efficiently. Let's say I'm doing this research. What I'll do, possibly, I'll ask them direct questions. Okay, what you want in a remote, what type of challenges you have, and all. Maybe in the later stage, you can also ask them to draw a remote. What is the ideal remote for you? And you can ask them questions based on those drawings. There's a good way to understand how people engage and how people respond in terms of like drawing a remote. Can we do this exercise? Okay, what is the ideal remote you will have for air conditioner? Do you have pen and pencil? Oh, pen and paper. Sorry, I'm sorry. Pencil or paper, pen or paper. What type of remote you would like to have for your air conditioners, which can be universally usable? Okay, I'm giving you 3 minutes to draw a remote. Are you okay with this exercise? Let's see how whatever response we get. Ready? Are you doing? The brief is very simple. You have to draw a remote, which can be a universal remote, which can be used by most of the users in a given situation for air conditioner. I'm saying air conditioners because it requires less number of buttons. Otherwise, television remotes are too complicated nowadays. So is it possible for somebody to possibly can you share those images here? Maybe you can send me the link or maybe I can share with you one of the folder.
Also, like if you would like to switch on your camera and then maybe show that drawing to you to us
No,
like through
what
that.
I'm doing, Saurabh, I'm
Okay,
just
sure.
sharing with them a link.
All
Uh,
right.
I'm sharing a folder which is accessible to all. Please drop your images there. Just a moment. Okay, I'm typing a link here that you can. Okay, yes. Here is the link. How many of you have completed your drawing? Can you draw a remote which is universal remote? Can be used by anybody. Nobody has submitted so far. Guys, are you working? Not working?
Yes, sir, I am uploading. Basically, I've just made, I have to tell
Okay.
here or I have to just upload.
Krishman. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Krishman.
Basically, I have, in past, I've thought about this because
Okay.
not past, just like 20 days back because I was getting my AC serviced
Okay.
and remote गलती से भैया से टूट गया.
Okay.
So then I thought of an Nokia phone. कितना ही मान लो टूटता नहीं था. छोटा होता था तो एक हाथ में
Yes.
भी आ जाता था. So
Yes.
AC remotes can be just like the old Nokia phones.
Yes. Actually, what happens after some years, you will realize that that remote is not available in the market. This is a bigger problem.
Yes, because yeah,
And
you
second
have
is
the
like
phone in the
remotes are not matching with each other. Even the same brand remotes are like same brand, sort of like remotes are not compatible to each other. It's also a big problem. Have you got the link? How many of you are submitting? Just let me know so that we will not be waiting for everybody to submit. Yeah. I wanted to show some of the images here. So please share. We are stopping it here. Are you done? Can we have some responses?
Kindly please raise your hand or maybe give us a thumbs up like once you have submitted it.
No images so far, Saurabh. Have you drawn?
Oh, okay.
Saurabh, have you done?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm just like, I'm not sure how to like upload it. I would have like shown you.
Sir, it is showing that access is required
Access
Yes.
is
to edit.
required. Okay, just a moment. I have just given the access, but I don't know whether there is a problem or something. Anyone with the link? Anyone on the internet with the link can access it. Oh, sorry, editor. Okay, yes, one has to edit. Okay, sorry. Yeah, done. Please upload. Okay, this is also one of the good way. Old Nokia phone. Okay. So Krishman, you have to upload your concept remote here. Okay, I'll also upload my image. Okay, we have got 3 images. Few more to come. Okay, we have got 3 images so far. Guys, please. This is where we need support from community. Okay, I'm just. Are you able to see here? All right, so we have got some images. 3 images. Okay. So I'll be sharing my image also, what I have drawn, and then we'll discuss quickly that how users respond to your queries. And here we have seen that some of you have made remotes which have got more of a dial instead of, okay, few more images here. All right. I will take these out. We have got 6 images, just a moment, and then we'll close the survey. Okay, these are the images which we have received. Are you able to see? Okay,
Yes, sir, it
somebody
is
has
visible.
drawn a simple image of like power button and some figure. Yeah. Right. Okay. Slide for increasing temperature or decreasing temperature and touch panel. Okay, this is the simplest one, easiest one. Somebody has drawn multiple keys. Yeah. Temperature up and down, then there is a mic, so you can just tell power mode and all buttons. Yeah. And somebody has said only these buttons are required. Yeah, these many. So click, move up and down, fan, swing, temperature. Only these buttons are required. Okay, very good. This is very interesting, na? This one. So it says temperature, fan plus minus, and mode. Okay, perfect. And the power button. There's something which is required. Not even the screen is required here. You don't need a screen here because you can see the temperature there up in the air conditioner. Some other explorations are also like this. Yep. So maybe I can delete some of those images. Okay, we have got another response like this, which says timer, sleep, mode, temperature up and down. Very minimalistic sort of like images. If I just search for type of remotes, yeah, and I just search for the images of AC remotes. Okay, can you see the image here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so can you see number of buttons here in the first remote, number of buttons here in the second remote with no organized approach. Third one is more minimalistic, but has more buttons on the wall on the top. This is very complicated one, but says few are constantly usable and few are less usable. The red one, the fifth one, this one. Fifth one is a complicated one, champion of complicated remote. Okay. And similarly, other remotes are also there. See, ideally, you have very similar sort of like simple sort of like functions in a remote where you don't need a great sort of like science to possibly control a air conditioner. But what we see in terms of design of remote, people forget what they really want to design or what they really want to have as a form of remote and who's going to use it and what type of complications are going to be there while using those remote. There is one which has some analysis also. This one, the Reddit one, Blue Star AC remote. And there are complicated sort of like button which somebody has pointed out that power should have been here and something must have gone there or something. Yeah. But this is how we possibly get some responses. I think I'll really appreciate that you have participated and appreciate those who have really thought about this idea. Sketching is a great way to understand how your customers think, yeah, or what they have in mind. Yeah. You can possibly use that method to get some insights. Okay. So on the last slide, we discussed this, that how you possibly engage your customers. Any other questions in this regard? There is another remote which has come up in the chat box with limited number of buttons. Okay. So maybe you can engage your customers or your target audiences in multiple such ways. Yeah, gossiping is sometimes a good way. Having some games or having them engaged with some activities is another great way to understand what they think and how they behave in certain situations. Yeah. Moving forward, understanding your idea. When it comes to researching, understanding of your idea or researching your idea is also becoming, it also becomes very critical. Yeah. So when you are looking into your idea going forward as an entrepreneurial sort of like outcome, you have to analyze that idea from multiple perspectives. You should basically look into where this idea has come from, how this idea has come to your mind, and why you really feel that this idea is really good to take it forward. Test the validity and reliability of your idea. So don't just marry with your idea. Yeah. Stay with the idea for a little longer time. You possibly try to understand why this idea is so critical, so important, why it is staying in your mind, and why it should be worked on. Requires some validity and reliability of the idea. So you need to check that very strongly and then confirm that, okay, this idea is staying for long and you have to work on this. Refine the idea as per the real challenges. So maybe one idea which has come up, maybe the idea of remote might be a great idea to go for a minimalistic sort of like remote. But maybe you have to work a little further in terms of like other user requirements and why you need a universal remote across the air conditioners and how this remote can possibly solve the problem of remotes and air conditioning across the world. If let's say this is taken up as a challenge and you come up with this idea that every air conditioner in the world should have one common remote. They should not have multiple sort of like functions and it should be usable across. Yeah. What will happen and how this idea will possibly go forward can be possibly seen through the real sort of like challenges. Can it sustain in a business context? So whether idea has that potential to sustain in a business context. Maybe some ideas are good to work with, but might not have a business possibility in terms of taking it forward. Yeah, I'll give you another example of. Have you imagined of a keyboard with a touchpad? Because we always rely whenever we are using a desktop, we have to have a mouse also. This type of mouse, yeah, very common mouse is always there. Have you thought of anything like a keyboard which has got a touchpad? There is no touchpad in this keyboard now. Have you ever thought of this idea? Have you has anybody purchased such type of keyboard which has got touchpad like uh, tablets or like laptops? Guys, please respond. I'll just search for it. There are multiple such keyboards which have got touchpads. I'll show you some images. Yeah, this is the one which has got touchpad on the side. Yeah. There are others also which have got touchpad on sides. Yeah. So this idea is amazing in terms of a product, and a lot of people will say yes to this idea. But if you just see the reality, nobody goes for it. Nobody want to buy a keyboard with a touchpad, and that is why it is not so popular in the given market. Could you see this? Yep.
Yes, sir.
So it happens with most of the ideas that those ideas don't propose or present a business possibility. You have to check that very clearly. What type of support is needed to realize those ideas in terms of design, in terms of technology, in terms of management, in terms of collaboration or vision? Very important one. Like how this idea can possibly sustain and get support from all these sort of factors to go forward is very, very important to be analyzed at an idea level. And there is a possibility of doing research in terms of taking those ideas forward. With all precautions, you can possibly share your idea with people who might be your prospective customers or maybe those who are possibly willing to invest in your idea, and then see whether this idea sustains that grilling or not. There is a very good example, which comes from, I forgot to mention here. This comes from Roger Martin's book, Design of Business. It's a very interesting book to read. Design of Business is uh, this concept of explorer versus exploiters come from there. Try to analyze your idea from this perspective. Whether your idea is a great idea, great exploration, or whether it is having a possibility of exploitation also. And there are two types of people. One, those who create great ideas, and others, those who create great businesses out of those ideas. Okay? And there are multiple examples like that, which support the idea of exploration on one side and idea of exploitation on the other side. Yep. So before moving forward, I think your idea need to be checked. Then having understanding of market, how your market is going to be in a given situation. Many times it happens, like especially with designers, it happens very common that people feel that the uh, the product is or the idea is very good and everybody is going to buy this. Many times it happens that we make up our mind in such a way that we feel that this product is, people are just waiting for this product to go into the market and they will jump on it and they will just start buying this product. But it doesn't happen in many scenarios. Many times we forget that product is not meant for everybody. Product is not going to be purchased by everybody. Or product is not going to meet everybody's requirement. And this is where I think one of the very important management tool works, marketing tool works in terms of segmentation, targeting, and positioning. So you will not be able to sell your product across the market. Yeah, it is never going to happen. You will always find some segments who are going to appreciate your product. Some people in those segment will be able to show some interest to you. At some point, they will be able to purchase that. Yeah. It's very simple otherwise to understand. Let's say Apple phone is a great product. Everybody want to buy that product. Yeah. But what happens like when it comes to the market, a segment which is a premium one is willing to buy that product because they know that they can afford that phone and they have some sort of like choices like that. Yeah. Targeting is to those who are really willing to buy. So even in those segments, not everybody buy Apple phones. Some people prefer Samsung or some other premium phones. And some of them are like not interested in buying any luxury phone. They're just okay with any phone which is working well. Yeah, a mid segment phone. So that is the targeting and positioning at what price point you are basically presenting your product or services is the positioning. So even your targeted population would not be willing to take up that product if it is not positioned properly. Yeah. Is the challenge in the real time scenario. Same way, estimation of your market, like in terms of its size, is also very critical. It's also a very important part of your research activity before you launch your product or before you go forward to make a product which is a full scale sort of like prototype. Yeah, understanding market sizing is basically to understand what is the total market for this, which is a common term nowadays because of Shark Tank. That TAM, SAM, and SOM is very important to understand, especially for the ideas which have never been tried or which have not seen some sort of like response so far. Yeah. Try to understand what is the market available for you, which is the total market, yeah, which is where such type of products are existing. Serviceable available market is basically where you will be able to provide your services. So if I am being from Gujarat, there is a possibility that I will be able to present my product only in this state or nearby states. So serviceable market is this only. And whatever my aspirations or my ambitions could be in given situation, I will possibly not be able to sell more than these 2, 3 states. That could be the reality. Yeah. Within that serviceable product market scenario, there is a possibility that I can acquire some of the market. So it is not that even if I'm able to reach out to all the Gujarat based cities or maybe markets, I'll possibly not be able to acquire all the customers in the given market. Whatever be the situation, it is not going to achieve 100% market occupancy. Yeah. In those scenarios, I'll possibly make some dent by selling 10% products in the market. Or maybe if I'm doing really great, I can acquire 50% market. But that reality should be known to the entrepreneurs. It's very, very important to analyze it early and keep correcting it. With time, when you will go out, when you will start talking to your customers, you will start framing new sort of like image about your market. You'll start getting new data, new information about those factors. Yeah. Then comes the organizational understanding of enterprise. So when it comes to really launching your product, maybe going out in the market, it requires very important thing to be done. Yeah. And that is basically to produce that product or provide that service in the real market. Yeah. Being 5 people organization, you will not be able to reach out to everybody. Being a 50 people organization, you will not be able to possibly do everything in a given situation. Yeah. Or in some cases, you cannot hire 500 people in one go just because you don't have money or you don't have capacity to handle those many people or you don't have experience of doing that. Are the realities which you need to be aware of when you're understanding about what is going to happen in your organization. So organizational understanding, basically this talks about the larger concept of idea and how it is desirable. You can possibly analyze this in an organizational context also. There's the idea model of DFV, where it says any product or any service or any setting in a given situation has desirability, feasibility, and viability as very important components. Desirability basically deals with the user concerns, where organization looks into what type of services they can basically provide to the organization, to the audience. Feasibility basically looks into the possibilities which are through the organization. Yeah. So what organization can create? Let's say you're making an electronic device. That means you can make certain number of device in a given situation if you have those technologies with you. So you'll possibly look into engineering of it. Maybe you will be looking into technology behind that product. Maybe you will work on operations in terms of buying certain machines or some sort of like products to manufacture those products. You will possibly look into how delivery of that product will happen in a given situation. This is basically talking about how you will realize your product. Viability comes in a scenario when you want to scale up, when you want to reach out to large number of people, and then you have to see the economics of how it is going to work out. For any small organization, it is not possible to acquire all the market in one go. For any even bigger organization, you cannot set up a factory which can produce 10 times your present day requirement. It is not possible. You will always be uh, you will always be curious about how big is the market and how much you should really produce, because it requires a lot of investment. It requires a lot of like energy, time, money, everything. Yeah. So knowing your market from the previous slide, if you have idea of your larger market and how much market you can acquire, possibly you can look into the viability part of it. You can see if you can make 10 pieces a day and you can reach out to, let's say, 300 pieces a month. If this gives you sustenance, possibly you will go for it. If you know your capacity can go up to 3,000 products, then possibly you can expand your capacity and you will be trying to reach out to 3,000 products. But market is very volatile and there is a possibility that there is going to be some sort of like rejection or unpredictable response from the customers. You will be little cautious or little uh, sort of you will not be going very enthusiastically about that product. Yeah. In those scenarios, the estimation of your capacity versus possibilities out there in the market is very, very important. Yeah. Ultimately, you have to make some profit or some sustenance through your business. That is one of the core sort of like idea of doing any enterprise. In those scenarios, the estimation in terms of like how much money you are investing and how much return it is generating in a given situation is very, very critical. So let's say if you require 3,000 products to be sold in a month, you will never be able to make profit with 2,500 products because that is not going to sustain your organization. You will be making losses because that is something which is a break even for you in a long run. So in those scenarios, estimation of total number of products to be made and how much minimum number of products are really required is very important to be understood. If you have a growth trajectory, then in those scenarios, you also have to look into how funding and other part of it will possibly be able to support you in terms of achieving certain objective. Yeah. This will possibly be coinciding with your next level sessions when you will be going out for more detailed understanding of like how you should pitch and how you should possibly raise funds. And people will be asking you how much you really want to produce, how much you really want to invest, how much money is really required to make something realizable in this scale. At that time, you will possibly be able to make use of this concept. Yeah. Last two slides, and then we can have a quick discussion. So when it comes down to insights, when it comes down to saying what is really coming out of your research, let's say you have done all these activities on the go. You have done your user research. You have tried to understand what type of requirements are there, what type of users are going to buy your products or services, or who is going to get benefited out of your enterprise. Possibly understanding what type of market you are going to work in and what type of challenges you are going to face when you come across your idea and how it is realizable. Then coming to the size of market and how much you can really acquire that from within a given frame of time, and how your organization is going to be set up, how your organization is going to take a structure to meet those objectives. And this is sorted, there are possibly insights which are to be worked on. Yeah. In research, we call insights as very important sort of like factors or important leads to go forward. Yeah, insights are usually not the data which is coming out of your research activity. So maybe 2 plus 2 is 4, but 2 plus 2 also tells you things can be added if they are calculated in right manner. That could be possibly the insights of this process. Or in some cases, if you are asking your users to respond to certain things, you can possibly look into something which users have also said, but they have not meant anything about it. Or maybe you have interpreted something which user have never said about it. Yeah. And those are really very useful sort of like tips for you to make use of it in the larger entrepreneurial scenario. So insights are usually coming from the deeper user connect when you start looking into users and their mindsets and behaviors and their requirements and challenges. In those scenarios, insights emerge. You feel that, okay, user is trying to resolve these type of problems, or they are struggling in those areas, or maybe they have these type of challenges, or maybe something is to be done in and around certain topics. Yeah. Your understanding of context in a more sort of like holistic or more deeper level is something which emerges from the research activity, which is insight. So context in a common scenario, you can possibly say that people are unaware about healthcare scenario, but in a contextual sort of like system, contextual sort of like learning, you will be able to say that role of government is also very critical. Yeah, this could be possibly your insight, and you can possibly derive some sort of like ways to make government more active, or maybe making healthcare services reaching out to large number of people. Yeah. Relevance of societal problems could possibly be emerging from the insights. So why certain things to be resolved? Let's say something which is related to maybe sanitation, yeah, where problems have not been defined rightly, or maybe ideas are not working out in right manner. Yeah, you can possibly look into what type of societal structures, what type of challenges society as a cumulative sort of like mass or collective masses being uh, facing could possibly be the insight which can possibly lead to some sort of like directions. Novelty as an idea, an approach may emerge from your research. Maybe your idea can get refined, maybe your idea can get more aligned to the requirement of the people, and that could possibly be emerging from the research activity. Yeah. In some cases, the research also leads to some sort of like impact which is possible in the societal scenario. In some cases, you can possibly analyze what is going to happen if you come up with these ideas and if you implement those ideas in real-time scenario. Yeah. Could be analysis of your research outcome. You can possibly come up with actionable and sustainable approaches in your way forward. Is the idea of research basically to understand what type of things to be done and how it can possibly sustain on its own. The validation and implementation can be a possibility if your research is right and you have taken up the right sort of like close from your outcome. Yeah. Ultimately, it comes down to the value which is perceived by the system and what value you are going to take out in the larger sort of like run. The real value, which is basically the value which has gone in, or maybe the cost which has gone in, is the real value. Let's say a phone requires maybe around 2,000 to 5,000 rupees to make a phone. Is the real value of the phone. And many times we don't realize that real value of phone is much lesser than what we are paying for it. Yeah. And sometimes we look for the economic value. Maybe you are coming up with some social solutions, and economic value of that possibly is something which is paid by the people. Yeah, which is paid by the people in terms of like they are ready to pay this much for anything which you are providing. Whereas perceived value is something which they are willing to pay, even if it is less real valued or less valued in the economic scenario. Yeah. So maybe perceived value can work well in terms of luxury products or products which are to be seen as something more aspiring or more desired. And at the same time, there is a market value of anything which is going to be presented in the market. Yeah. So market value is basically decided by the market, not by the promoter or the presenter of the product or services. So market decides whether it is going to be sold for this value or for some other value. It's something which need to be calculated across your journey when you are working on your ideas. So what is the real value of your work? If you take it to the market, what is economic value of it? How people are going to take it? What perception it is going to create about your offering, and what market is going to pay for it is very, very important to be calculated. It can be calculated through your research activities. And the final slide, it talks about how we can possibly make use of design. Maybe we can, while doing research, don't analyze only the things or the data or information which are coming to you. Try to synthesize information, try to see in totality, try to see in harmony, try to see those information in a collective sort of like manner. It's very, very important. In some cases, we feel that okay, parts can be assembled and some object can be made. But sometimes the performance of the product is much beyond the performance of individual parts. And that is something which is very critical in the social scenario. So elements which you are analyzing should not remain as element only. They should combine and they should synthesize and become one entity which is going to serve to the larger audience. And that can possibly be outcome of your research activity in the market. Yeah, humanize things. Many times, especially technology or marketing approaches, sometimes forget the human aspect of it. Maybe in some cases, human thought process, human behavior is more dominant than the analytical sort of like approaches. And having idea of those human sort of like tendencies or responses is also very important to be taken care. A good example is like vaccination drive for COVID vaccines. Yeah, how humanizing it was and how it possibly created certain type of impact. Whereas in some cases, people were also doubting whether it will work or not and how it is going to possibly treat people and all. And in all those scenarios, a humanizing approach could be possibly finding leaders who are ready to come forward and say that this is working. In some cases, scientists providing information in right manner. In some cases, maybe we are seeing some sort of like trends, and it all have worked in collective manner, and we could possibly got saved a little extra in the given situation. Yeah, the approach when we say design and when we say design as a collective sort of like idea in this scenario, in the research scenario, it has to have a holistic and systemic approach. Systemic differs from holistic approach, and systemic basically talks about the different elements which are emerging from your research and seeing them in a relationship. That is very, very important. So don't just see that your functions are working in a different silo sort of like scenario and your logistics are in some other way and your market is behaving in some other different sort of like manner and your core teams are working in some other different domain. It should not happen. It has to be in a systematic manner, so that everybody churn out a more productive sort of like outcome. Ultimately, we are also talking about how sustenance and sustainability can possibly be achieved through all the activities. Here, this chart basically talks about role of design and how design can possibly be helpful in different stages where we are doing some sort of like form making and trying to make things more appealing in any given situation, be it a product, service, or a policy. It can be attractive. At a different level, it talks about how harmonized the whole process can be and how you can possibly create a system which is in harmony, which can produce more from the given sort of like elements. And on a larger scenario, you can possibly look into a strategic sort of like outcome where you are talking about vision, you are thinking about possibly a more broader and more impactful sort of like outcome in from the social enterprise. So that is more of a strategic sort of like way you can look into while doing this research activities. Yeah. Yes. So yes, these are some of the points which I wanted to bring in here. Yeah. Any questions so far?
Yes,
So I
thank you,
placed a
sir.
question in the chat actually. I just placed it
Yeah.
when you were talking about the market value, right? So Vishal, can you
Yes.
hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So the chat section was that question was that actually, what is the difference between perceived value and the hyped value? Because we sometimes see Nasa that goods and services which are not that worthy enough, but are also overraised. And but when we consume them, we regret later that why have we placed, why have we
Yeah.
paid so much for that? Like it
Yeah.
was not that worthy enough to be paid.
So hype is basically created by the organization. Yeah. But consumer sometimes decide I'm ready to pay this much for this. Yeah, so many times it happens that people agree that iPhones are overpriced. But a lot of people see value in that and they are ready to pay that much of money, maybe a lakh rupee for an iPhone, which is a similar device, the way other devices are working with some better experiences or maybe some added advantages.
So only three added advantages I can see: camera quality,
Yeah,
security.
yes.
That's all, sir.
So you are seeing it in a piece sort of like manner. You're saying, okay, camera is okay, I can get it in Samsung phone. Interface is good, I can get it in OnePlus. Maybe some basic sturdiness in this, I can get it in maybe MI or other devices also. But in totality, the Apple phone talks about experience. It talks about some premiumness, and it talks about a class also, because not everybody can afford that. Yeah. And not everybody want to possibly invest that much of money. And that is where the perceived value reaches out to a lakh rupee. Yeah. People see that, okay, I can see this much value is okay, I can pay for it. Yeah. I can possibly negotiate, but I'm okay with it. Is the perceived value which I really feel that I should be paying for. Yeah. Whereas market value, what is the value of second-hand iPhone?
So maybe 50, 60 at max,
Yeah,
what I think.
yeah, even less than that. Yeah, a 6-month-old iPhone is usually sold for 30-40,000 rupees, a lakh rupee phone. So market value decides how many people really want to sell their phones and how many people are really willing to buy that phone for that price. So market value says not more than 40,000, even if the piece is really good, working well, no damage, nothing, but selling for 40,000 rupees. Yeah. So that is something which is a drastic drop from the 1 lakh rupee, almost 60% drop or 50% drop. Yeah. Whereas a automobile, let's say a car, which is sold today, which is to be sold today after a year, will have drop of hardly 20%. Yeah. Cars perceived value is much better than car's market value is much better than iPhone. Yeah. At the same time, piece of land, what will happen after 6 months or a year? Prices will
Right.
go up. Prices will
Go up.
possibly go up because there is more demand and market feels that more can be paid for this. Yeah. So your consumers are all the time analyzing how much money I should pay for it. Yeah. Be it a product or be it a vaccine. Yeah. A life-saving vaccine also have a price, and those who cannot afford it will never be able to get those. Yeah.
So,
And
so
those who
saying
can
that,
afford it will also have a choice to make whether I should go for it or not.
So sorry to disturb you in between,
Yeah,
but
please.
so you initially said that market raises the hype of that product. So, but in that case, what you are saying now also gives me that inference. I don't know whether it's correct or not. Some user, like say 10 people are there in a group, and 5 people used Apple iPhone or 5 people took any Tata Safari car, okay, and they say यार like ये गाड़ी बहुत अच्छी है, ये गाड़ी का ये फीचर है, ये गाड़ी का
Yeah.
कंट्रोल अच्छा है, गियर सिस्टम अच्छा है, and 2 to 3 people are not like
Okay. Yeah.
agreeing. So remaining 3 people should wear like, so 5 people created the hype and 2 people, 3 people are not still agreeing. So remaining three where they should go. So hype is
So
created
they
by
will have
market or hype
alternatives,
is
na?
created by the
So
customer.
they usually market is the place where you will always get some alternative. So if you are not providing this service and this service is really required in a given situation, somebody else will come and plug the gap. Yeah, this is going to happen all across. There is no as such a product which is really required in the market and is not present in the market today. Yeah. You have any exceptional idea in the market, that means you are very, very innovative in bringing that idea to the market. And this is where entrepreneurs take advantage because they try to look into those gaps which have not been fulfilled so far. People have not been able to test those ideas or test those sort of like offerings. And this is where a bigger market is lying. Well, let's say you came up with new idea and somebody feels that, okay, this is really exceptional and we want to go for it. What will happen? You will get flooded responses, like in terms of, I want your product and please give it to me. Same thing happened with the Apple phones. When Apple came up with the phone, they already had certain products which were sold at a premium and they were perceived as a premium company. When they came up with touch phones, which were having better UI and better sort of like experiences and all, the product became great success. But during that time, it was sold for almost like 15-20,000 rupees, where market was flooded with 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 phones. So during that time, 4 times price of a phone was a much bigger sort of like thing to go for. Yeah. But at present, you will be able to see that there are a lot of phones which are within the range of 50, 60,000 rupees. Whereas Apple is just sold for a lakh rupee, hardly 50% extra premium on the phone. But Apple must have realized that nobody is going to buy 2 lakh rupee phone. And there is a good market if they go for 1 lakh rupee phone in a very wide sort of like global sort of like market scenario. Yeah. So that could be a game changer for you if you can analyze your market rightly and you can say how many people really. So which is not possible in the social scenario, but you will try to capture more number of people in your go. So whenever you want to launch something which is more sort of like usable for public, you'll possibly be looking forward to maybe something which is more accepted or more desired by people and at a price which not only help them but also sustain your organization in the long run. So those could be the trade-offs between multiple ideas which we discussed today, and from the products to market to maybe organizational perspective, how something can be something can work out for everyone. And this is where my suggestion is like you should not just be limited to your one idea, be it a service or product idea, but you should also research extensively about what is your market, what who's your customer, what type of uh, ongoing scenarios are there in the given situation. Maybe sometimes you have great market, but policies are not favoring. Maybe you have a great customer liking, but your market is not ready. Yeah? With a product which is really going to be very exceptional or very costly. Yeah. There might be a lot of people responding, okay, I like your product. I will buy this. When you launch this product for a price, maybe very high, people will say, okay, no, not interested right now. Yeah. In those scenarios, yeah, you have to be very careful about working on all the domains. And those domains should work in sort of like relationship with each other.
So there was one more question in the chat if you can look.
Yeah. Yeah, it gets affected by influential people. That is one of the way to market your product, to brand your product or maybe create some sort of like image about your product. So for a product like consumer product, it is always going to be great benefit if it is going to be sold in good number. You will hire somebody who is influential. Let's say you ask Amitabh Bachchan to maybe promote for something, and Amitabh Bachchan promotes that product. A lot of people will have trust that okay, Amitabh is promoting, so we should buy it. Or maybe a modern sort of like age actor, maybe somebody Ranveer Kapoor promoting some brand, possibly be taken by somebody who is aligned with that idea. So influence is always working in favor of products or services, definitely, and it increases value also. So by having great sort of like people associated, increases value perception, and you try to compensate that value by increasing your price or getting more market through your reach or something. Like Amitabh Bachchan promotes which paint brand? I have a very quick closing question. Can you type
Yeah.
here?
Yeah.
Which paint brand? Don't search for this stuff. Which paint brand is promoted by Amitabh Bachchan? Because no, paint brand like Narolac, Asian Paints, Berger. Okay, Vishal, Akash, anybody else? Saurabh? Dhruv, okay, very good, good responses. Asian Paints, okay, nobody writing Narolac. Amitabh was promoting Narolac. For a long time, he was promoting Narolac, but it helped Asian Paint to sell more. Okay, just a one. I'll just search for some images.
Yes, sir. It's narrow like I guess.
It's Narolac, na?
Yeah.
But the advantage was taken up by
Asian
Asian
Paints.
Paints. This is how the value is perceived by the brands. And sometimes people associate those brands with certain type of products. And one should definitely make use of it. Yeah, if it is, let's say, even if a social sort of like initiative, if you want to increase or maybe the value of your services or maybe increase impact of your work or maybe want to bring in some sort of like association, you will always try to bring in somebody who is influential in that domain. Yeah, and that works very well. Okay,
So,
but right understanding of your product. So there is a mistake. I think Aerolec did not understand that Amitabh is naturally going with Asian Paints in early times, like long back, I think 10 years back. Yeah. But this is how the paint company did not get great sort of like benefit out of it. So your product understanding, your consumer understanding is very, very critical in these scenarios. Whether you're and in same scenario, the Gutka ads where people have rejected the idea of hiring all these guys, the big stars in Gutka ads. Yeah, because there is
Yes,
no
sir.
association. People are not accepting that these superstars should really promote Gutkas in this manner just for the money. Yeah. And many of them, like including Sunil Gavaskar and others, are promoting Gutkas, which is not a right scenario, and people are not possibly taking it very well also. Yep. So definitely the value perceived versus value delivered is to be analyzed, and that to be analyzed in a very early stage. Yep. All right. So we'll be meeting next on 28th.
Yes.
Yeah. And we'll be discussing. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Please, sir, continue.
Yeah. So we'll discuss the individual cases in that scenario, how you are planning to go for your research. So please come up with your idea statement, the problem statement, what type of idea you have, and what type of research approach you really want to take up. Maybe 4 or 5 cases we will be able to discuss that day. And sort of I'll share with you a mail which you can possibly circulate with others. just to create
Definitely,
some
sir.
4 or 5 slides
Sure,
of
sure, sure.
like work. Yeah.
Perfect, sir. Perfect. We'll circulate it, sir.
All right. Any questions?
I would just request everyone to please, like for another 5 minutes, please switch on your cameras for now. Any questions, anybody? Thank you, Ayush.
All right. So thank you everybody
Thank you so
for
much,
your
sir. Thank
patience
you.
and for your
Thank you
time.
for your time, sir. I would just request everyone to like, I'm just sharing my screen so that if you can, like maybe scan this thing and give us your feedback, it would be great for all of us. Also, if you have any questions or something, please raise your hand. Otherwise, we can like end this session. Thank you.
All
Sure,
right.
sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for your time, sir. Wishing a great evening ahead and looking forward to meet you all on 28th. I would request everyone to please register yourself on the portal for the upcoming workshop. And also, I'll be sharing the email with the task which will be assigned to you. And like we can again discuss 4, 5 and other case studies which were not discussed earlier. So kindly be prepared with that as well. So yeah, thank you so much. And also I would request you to please complete your profile to the students or the teams who have not completed it on the portal. Like there are some things which are missing, such as like your full name, your gender and your college name, these things. So I also did an email in the morning itself. So kindly go through it and please fill it up accordingly. So yeah, thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for your time and looking forward to see you on 28th, sir. Yeah, thank you, everyone.